What's up? I'm Sam Ekstrom. Welcome to the Squad Show. Today, I tell you who's going to be TE1 for the Vikes, if not TJ Hockenson.
What's going on? Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman. I got our first skill player in our prospect of the day segment. You're going to want to stick around for that.
Reggie Wilson. And now that Alec is here, I'm eager to talk to him about Mizzou basketball. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to talk quarterbacks.
Yeah, I'm Alec Lewis. Happy to be here. And I guess today I'm going to probably have to defend why my mock draft prediction with the first pick was a guy who's coming off a torn ACL.
Skol! It's the Viking Squad. Everything Minnesota Vikings every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the land of 10,000 lakes. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. It's time to gear up. The Viking Squad Show starts now.
That's right. We got some Missouri guys on the show today. Welcome in. Viking Squad Show streaming on the Locked On Vikings YouTube channel. We've got a big show ahead. The QB speculation and analysis continues, as it will all offseason. We get into our free agency preview for the tight end position, and we figure out what to do with this TJ Hockenson guy. We also are going to revisit Alec Lewis's free agency predictions that he made at The Athletic, where he writes and covers the Minnesota Vikings closely. And there are some FanDuel Super Bowl odds that we got to dig into as well. But Alec Lewis, welcome to the rotation. Welcome to the show. You got aggregated. You got aggregated yesterday. Did you see this?
You get aggregated every day when you do this job, and it's just a matter. I appreciate, in some ways, like I've never taken the approach of getting mad at aggregators because they are delivering information in some ways. Just sometimes they can get you worse than others. But yeah, I did see there was some kind of tweet yesterday.
Yeah, let's get it out there, and then you can set the record straight. So the aggregation I saw, and this ties in with the quarterbacks, you said that the Vikings want J.J. McCarthy to have a massive offseason in terms of leadership, consistency, and daily work habits, with mechanics being a key point of emphasis. Was that the true reporting? Was that from a source that you want to talk about? Like, what is this what Alec Lewis actually said?
Yeah, it's absolutely what I said. I don't, it's funny because sometimes you say things and the aggregation is, they are lurking and they are at the ready. And then there are other times where you just say things that you feel like are pretty widely known and widely expected. And this was one of the ones in that camp where I think it's pretty clear coming off the last 2 years. Coming off the season that J.J. McCarthy had, him needing a massive offseason and building off what he did down the stretch seems pretty obvious to me. But I will say, I do think for him, it is beyond just performance. It is establishing to everybody in the building that he is the guy that the organization is leaning on and is kind of relying on. Like, I do think every day, every week, every month, it is incumbent upon him to prove that. So, yeah, the aggregation, it was one of those that I was like, okay. I think we all kind of know that.
Yeah, Luke Inman, I feel like we were sold a complete package of J.J. McCarthy, who has the physical skill, but also his head is screwed on straight. There's leadership qualities. He's a mature individual for being 21 years old. And now I feel like the past couple months that's really got poked away at. We got KOC taking these veiled shots at him in the media, like, stop with the 9 stuff. I don't like you celebrating going into the end zone. We got to get the leadership qualities right, the mechanics right. I feel like that image that we were maybe sold during the offseason, during the time of optimism, kind of got chiseled away. And now we're talking about this product that not only has all this work to do with his arm and his mechanics, but also the intangible stuff too.
Yeah. The video clip I always play back, Sam, when you refer to that kind of stuff off the field, is him in the draft meeting talking to KOC saying, "I would run through a wall for you." And not to say that he still obviously wouldn't do that stuff, but the information that has came out, I don't know, over the last couple months or so, makes you just wonder what's been going on behind the scenes. I think, starting his rookie year out, and having that knee injury just really derailed so much development that I don't think we truly understood coming out of Michigan that he really needed. The other part that even I undersold, Sam, was the fact that, okay, he's going to be off the field, but this is still good for a rookie. The first time in the NFL, a 22-year-old kid, he can be at TCO. He can watch the film. He can see what it takes to prepare with other veteran quarterbacks. I don't think I truly valued enough how much that kid needed to be on the field that first year, and wiping out that entire first rookie season, Sam, just again, kind of got everything derailed. And then from there, he couldn't stay healthy the first few games. He got hurt versus Atlanta, so on and so forth. The offensive line didn't do a great job. We are in a obviously, I don't want to call it a make or break or do or die season here, but we're in year 3 already, and it's a 4-year contract. Obviously, first rounders get that 5th-year option, but we are in the back half of this rookie contract. So obviously it's a huge year. And again, unfortunate injuries part of the game, but hoping he's doing everything behind the scenes that he needs to do.
I don't think you're overstating it. I think it is. I think if it goes badly, you don't often see young first round quarterbacks who kind of flame out. You don't really see them stick around as a backup in year 4, year 5. Like a lot of times the ties are cut if it doesn't work out after 3 years. Now, Reggie, you're JJ McCarthy. You ended the year pretty well, right? Like the injuries, bad. He's probably sitting at home with like some frozen peas on his hand, icing the hand, getting the hand right off whatever surgery he had. But he's probably thinking, okay, I ended the season on a positive note. And then what's the worst thing that could have happened for him? Sam Darnold goes and wins the Super Bowl, right? Like just to twist the knife in a little bit more, like how much he didn't live up to the expectations. Sam Darnold goes and wins the Super Bowl. That has not helped the JJ McCarthy narrative.
I feel for JJ, honestly. If we're just going to keep it a buck, like I feel for him because I don't know of a first round quarterback who maybe had so much of this pressure put on him. You see Sam Darnold win 14 games your rookie season as you sit out with the knee injury, and then you come back and they don't bring Sam back. They can't get Daniel Jones to come back. They don't bring Aaron Rodgers. And it's like, yeah, you get the keys. And now all of a sudden, like there's immense pressure and there's a developmental aspect to this whole thing. And I think losing that year of like physical development, I know they talked about it being like a red shirt year and all that, but physical development, I think it would have benefited JJ to have at least another year to maybe just sit, go through everything, work on those mechanics, because some of that conversation just kind of got tiring after a while. And I think, a narrative that even Kevin O'Connell kind of created, even he got tired of like us media members bringing up, the mechanics and, him telling PA, we're just waiting on some of that cement to dry and all those things. And it's funny because I'm glad Alec is on the show because I thought he wrote a great article just talking about the fact that, okay, Darnold won the Super Bowl, but like, it wasn't just like an apples to apples comparison. Like bringing Sam Darnold back and having JJ sit another year, I don't think it just automatically means the Vikings would have been in the Super Bowl. Like there were things that the Vikings did not have in place that the Seahawks put in place that I think really helped Sam thrive. I know a lot of people were like, oh man, what happened to all the slants in the Vikings, like route tree concepts? Like what happened to, I think if you saw anything quick coming out of the quarterback's hands, it was a screen. And it was just like, well, is there more than that, to the offense? And it's so funny because it took like a 4-game losing streak during the season for KO to be like, all right, we're just putting everything behind whatever it takes to help JJ be successful out there. And we saw JJ, granted, it was against some very putrid defenses over the last several weeks, but we saw JJ actually have some confidence, not worry about the mechanics. The mechanics were still kind of all over the place. and he just went out there and played ball. And I think, those kind of gave you a little bit of a little bit of confidence about him, but then he got hurt again with the hand, and it was just like, here we go. And then you see Sam Darnold win the Super Bowl, and now all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, maybe if Sam stays, maybe the Vikings are in a different position. But this is pretty telling to me that Kevin O'Connell is looking at guys in the Super Bowl. Vrabel comes in year one after a 13-loss season and takes a team to the Super Bowl. Mike McDonald comes off a 10-win season that they missed the playoffs, and then he's winning all of his first playoff games. Kevin O'Connell is yet to win a playoff game, and he had Sam Darnold in the building and couldn't win with him. And I thought what Alec brought up in his article was interesting. The design rollout rate, 7.7%, compared to the Seahawks, Sam Darnold, 12.5%. I also thought that it was interesting, Alec, you brought up their pass rate and run rate was 50-50. And the Vikings were 56-43. And also the Vikings had a higher pass rate when they were leading than the Seahawks did. And they had a lower run rate when they were leading than the Seahawks did. And also you talked about the pass protection as well, that wasn't the same. And the running game, Kenneth Walker is a huge back, big back, but he runs a 4.3. And so the Vikings don't necessarily have that as well, just being able to turn around and just hand the ball off and see a guy just slice you for 10, 12 yards every clip. So there are a lot of different things in play. And I just don't think that it was a very fun couple weeks. I don't know how online JJ is. I know he's online, but there was a lot of narratives being tossed around about him that probably wouldn't instill a whole lot of confidence in me about the whole thing. But JJ seems to be made of the right goods. That being said, it's just a ton of pressure on him to actually get it right this offseason and work that into a good year next year. That's so much pressure. I do not envy him.
Gold Sound asked, and this is a good one for Alec, has JJ himself ever called himself 9 or talked about it since the presser where he introduced it? And I would also add to that, has he distanced himself from it at all since his head coach threw him under the bus in some way?
Yeah, I don't. The only time I've ever heard that was that one press conference where, I can't even remember the line of questioning that
Detroit game, right? It was the Detroit game that he won. That does jog the memory and feels correct. But the line of questioning brought him to that point, and I think afterward, I think I remember thinking to myself a little bit like that will probably become a thing or what have you. But what I would say about, some of what Reggie just said was interesting to me because, I definitely empathize. I'm with Reggie in that I empathize with the dude as young as JJ McCarthy is with everything that has been on his plate. And I think early in the season, I even told JJ that because you could feel the ups and downs and the weight of it all and the gravity of being this person in this role with the team that was as good as it was kind of around JJ. But in terms of what has been said the last couple weeks and specifically on Super Bowl Radio Row, I didn't take any of those comments as really targeted at JJ McCarthy. It was more, in my opinion, though quotes are surfaced on social media and then people take those as targeted at JJ McCarthy. And what I would say is I know JJ is aware enough to know that his play has to be better for this team to get to the place that everybody wants it to go. So he's as young as he is, as much growth as any of us had to do at 22 years old. There's still an awareness factor that he has of the production and the performance not being good enough outside of a few games. And beyond that, I think even more important is just the availability factor. And that is probably the most broad, important component of JJ and what the Vikings need to do at quarterback. It has to do with making sure they have capable insurance if he cannot stay healthy, which he hasn't been able to. So that's kind of my thought. That was my thought a little bit listening to Reggie there. Yeah. Inman, last point on this. last year did set up a bit unfairly for McCarthy because we were making this vast judgment on 2 quarters of preseason football that this guy was ready. The head coach said we found our franchise quarterback. We still had a super small sample size. And then the Vikings go and choose him over Darnold, over Jones, and I know that Jones voluntarily left. We can get into the semantics there. They choose him over Aaron Rodgers, right? They chose to go with McCarthy over everybody. The expectations were so sky high, almost impossible to meet, and he came so woefully short that by discrepancy, it looked really, really bad for the young QB. Maybe going into 2026, a lower bar, and we'll get into this later, but you're the 22nd favorite to win the Super Bowl. Nobody's talking about the Vikings anymore.
No, you're
Maybe
totally right, though.
Helps.
You bring up a lot of good points because all the information, I mean, we're not in the building. Love to be a fly on the wall, but we're not in the building. We don't know how these conversations are going. We're just going off the information that they put out to us. And the fact that, okay, you guys are letting Sam Darnold go. That's one thing. To let Daniel Jones walk as well, though. We've had that conversation on the show multiple times. Also, too, we had a lot of conversations about maybe KOC really is the quarterback whisperer. Maybe it just doesn't matter. Maybe this offense with JJ and rebuilding the offensive line, all the money, all the the assets, the draft capital, the first round picks, maybe that is also going to kind of soften the landing a little bit for JJ McCarthy. And that simply wasn't the case. And to Alex's point, like the best ability is availability, especially at quarterback. To be derailed your entire rookie year, and then to start out the gate the first quarter of the season already hobbled, this guy really has never really had a chance to find any real momentum here, any chemistry. Obviously, practice is one thing, but doing it in a game is another. And we just haven't had a long enough runway here for JJ McCarthy to really get that big sample size to know what we're chewing on. There's still too much meat on the bone. And again, the issue for me is that we're in year 3 now. We just don't have a lot of time left. And granted, I mean, years 3, 4, and 5, we can learn a lot. We will learn a lot, but we are. It's in the back of my mind that we not wasted the first 2 years, but just haven't collected a lot of good information, substantial information to go off of, and that's I think the biggest concern heading into year 3.
QB decision, the biggest offseason
hey,
decision.
Sam.
Yeah.
Hey, Sam, real quick, can I ask Alec? I know you said that's exactly what you said about JJ headed into this offseason. Is it like realistic to think that all those things can be accomplished in one offseason and he comes into the preseason, into training camp, into the season, just being this totally changed for the better quarterback?
Well, the most important component of answering that question is it's definitely not going to be obvious if all of those things have taken a step forward before the Vikings have to make a decision on what type of quarterback they acquire. So that's, part of what complicates this next month is you're really projecting JJ McCarthy because you're not going to know until August what it looks like, how it feels. And so you have to, find the level of insurance before you have the answer to that question, which is just further projection to Luke's point that you have to do based upon the information you have. But I think it's a good question, Reggie. I think it's hard to imagine a guy can totally transform himself in a matter of months. And that's why I've said this many times, and I'll get it back to you, Sam. But there's 2 worlds at play here. There is quarterback development, which can take, as Sam Darnold showed, 5 to 7 years. And then there's the world of the amount of time a regime has when you're talking about a GM or a coach. You don't have 5 to 7 years, especially when you have a superstar receiver who wants to win right now and should win right now. And navigating those 2 worlds at the same time is very difficult. And it's why these conversations come with as much weight as they do.
I jotted this down.
Go ahead,
I
Sam.
jotted this down. Yeah, I jotted this down for today's show. In about the last 30 or so Super Bowls, young quarterbacks that took a huge step and made a Super Bowl, not necessarily won a Super Bowl, but made a Super Bowl. The big one's Jared Goff. And it was really 2 years after his jump. He got McVay, turned into like a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback instantly, and then made the Super Bowl the next year. Joe Burrow, big jump. Drake May, big jump. kind of Carson Wentz, even though he didn't play in the playoffs that year. Like, it has happened, maybe not from as low a depths as we are talking about with JJ McCarthy, but we have seen monumental, ascensions from young quarterbacks to make a Super Bowl. I don't think it's out of the question. It just takes a really special circumstance. Go ahead, Reg, quick thought, and then we'll get to break.
Yeah, I think two things that I feel like have kind of hurt Kevin O'Connell a little bit in this process was after JJ tore his meniscus, he got up at the podium and said, I think the Vikings fans should be very excited that they have their young franchise quarterback of the future. And also, after they played the Colts that year that Sam Darnold was playing, he was saying like, hey, organizations fail young quarterbacks more than quarterbacks fail organizations. And I think this process is kind of putting those two statements to the test. And I just wonder, like, did they feel like after they did all the intel on him coming out of Michigan that he was this developmental as he turns out to be? Them hammering this mechanics talk and all that stuff, like, just seems almost counterproductive to some of the statements that they've made.
You see the instant success of Mahomes, Burrow, Jackson, Nix, Stroud, Jaden Daniels. Like, it's hard. I think it was hard for this organization not to see the allure of having a great young quarterback and a belief in themselves that they could create that development quickly and expedite it and get them ready to go. Clearly, they weren't quite all the way there. Let's break, talk about the second biggest offseason decision, arguably, when we return. We are brought to you today by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off, move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. A lot of the play-by-play that I do on the side, it's all 1099s. You've got 6 different tax forms you're trying to input. It's a mess. I hate it. That's why TurboTax comes in handy. I don't spend hours. Just give it to a local expert. Connect online. They'll handle everything. The 1099s, the W-2s work to get you every single deduction. It's a huge time saver. Gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling everything. So for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert. Just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate. Get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. All right, rolling on Viking Squad Show. Again, the audio free and available wherever you get your podcasts, video streaming on Locked On Vikings. Please subscribe. Tight end. We've rehashed this before and we'll do it again. TJ Hockenson is set to make $21 million against the cap. If you cut him, you save $9 million. And then there's the statistical drop-off, right? The ADOT this year. I love talking ADOT. The ADOT this year fell off a map. I mean, his ADOT was 5.2, which is like 3 or 4 yards below what it had been historically for him, which was like 9, 10. Fell off the map. Yards per reception fell off the map. Nothing downfield, all underneath. I think you also have to take into account that Justin Jefferson had a pretty big fall off too. Jordan Addison had a pretty big fall off too because of the poor quarterback play. So, I mean, Alec, you're kind of establishing yourself on this show with your opinion. So let's get your opinion out there first. Where do you stand on the decision on TJ Hockenson? And is it about the money? Is it about the talent that he showed on the field last year? Like, how do you marry those two elements together in this decision?
Yeah, I mean, his season is really tough to evaluate because as a result of all of the offensive line injuries, he was often in protection. So some of that ADOT is the targets to him where he is protecting and then like a leak out kind of at the as somewhat of a safety valve from the line of scrimmage. So that statistic for me is interesting and it's complex probably to evaluate. And his whole season is that way. What I would say is it doesn't, at least for me, based on the tape, and this is just me speaking on watching the tape every single week, I'm not sure if he has the wiggle that he had pre-ACL injury. Now, I asked the question of, is being further removed from that injury going to give him a better opportunity at being the guy that he was, where he can catch 90 to 100 passes? I think that's a question that internally they have to evaluate. What I do know is this: his cap number for 26, as you mentioned, Sam, is 21 million. That ranks number one in terms of the most, the highest cap numbers among all tight ends in the NFL. So it does not make sense to have him playing on that cap number in 2026. Probably the most feasible option is to try to get him to a place from a pay cut standpoint that makes sense. And if you were to move on from him, that would leave a massive void at the tight end one spot, which would add another potential need this offseason among the many. So I personally stand where I'd be willing to move on from him if you have a very concrete plan to replace him. Otherwise, the pay cut is probably the route that I would try to go.
Yeah, I'm leaning that way as well. I'm sure we'll have this conversation a couple times before free agency hits. But for me, and we can pull up the free agent list though. But you move on from Hockenson, let's say, you're gonna have to go get somebody too. So I mean, how do you actually go into the season dumping a guy like Hockenson, adding somebody else that's probably going to cost a pretty penny as well, and make you feel more confident that you just made the team better? I just pulled up the list here. I'll fling out a guy, David Njoku. Let's just say, just for example, you dump Hockenson, you spend a decently big chunk of money on Njoku, right? Probably a top 5 tight end free agent target this year, 29 years old. But how much are we moving the needle, really? How much better did the team just get? Because, if they're both healthy, I'm not sure Njoku's that much better than Hockenson is. So a restructure, perhaps, to Alex's point, clear some cap space, another year removed from that nasty injury he had as well. I just can't get in the boat that says, all that talent he had is just gone. I mean, this was a bona fide, top 5 tight end not long ago with Kirk Cousins, with Sam Darnold. I feel like the bigger issue is you've had to keep him in pass protection, as you mentioned, Alec, and you're just not really getting your money's worth out of this pass catching tight end at that point. So, you could say that for a lot of different skill players as well. Justin Jefferson, they probably didn't get their money's worth for what they were paying him. Does that mean we should move on from him? I don't think so. There's just too many, factors and variables at play this year. And it just feels like there's something bigger foundationally going on with the offense last year than just guys like TJ Hockenson just all of a sudden just not being very good anymore.
Yeah, I mean, Reg, if they cut Hockenson, that would signal to me that they're just really disappointed with the player and they think he's washed. Because with Rob Brzezinski running the show now, it should be easy to find $9 million in savings just with void years, right? The way they use void years on this team, you can save $9 million in your sleep. If the goal is just to save money, you can do that. If they cut the guy, that tells me that they don't believe he has anything left in the tank.
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I think when you look at production matched with contract, maybe that's where you make a decision like that. Here's the thing, and none of you guys have said it, so I guess I'll fall on the sword here. The untimely drops from TJ Hockenson are bothersome, and they've been bothersome for the last few years that he's been with the team. Like, he'll be wide open, or it'll be some type of tough catch. It's so interesting, like when he does bring them in, and then the ones that he drops, like they don't really necessarily make like a rhyme or reason. And it's like, when he did have some of the opportunities last season, then you did see some of those drops at tough times during games, and it's just like, dang, like, he only has gotten so many opportunities because, as Alex said, he had to stay back to chip or to just straight up pass block, and it wasn't, for him. It's interesting too, just to see how he played with Kirk and how he played with Darnold. to see the production drop off, but it wasn't necessarily all on him. And I think like if we saw like the fullness of the offense that Kevin O'Connell really wanted to run, I think it's interesting to see where TJ stacks up and how he plays once he did come back. And so I don't know, man. It's a weird situation. I know the drops are troublesome, but I don't know that he's necessarily washed. I think, those were things that you would hear about when the Vikings ended up making that trade with Detroit. I think a lot of people from the Detroit perspective were just like, yeah, like we were cool with this. Not just because they had a great tight end in Laporta, but also it's just, they felt like from a production standpoint and just the price that they felt like maybe they could get a little bit more value. And I think that for me would be what I would think if the Vikings decided to make a move. They would kind of be in that same vein of what Detroit was thinking.
And I don't think he's washed either. I think that'd be the message I'd be getting if they cut him. But you've got a young quarterback who is not that accurate right now and makes a lot of poor decisions and isn't that comfortable throwing over the middle, right? That's oftentimes a high traffic area where you have to anticipate really well. And he just didn't find his tight end that much. Sam Darnold didn't find Hockenson a lot either, but you also had the injury coming back midseason from. So let me toss out a couple options for you. David Njoku was mentioned by Spinman. I like it. I think that's worth checking in on. Now, that might be a bigger price tag. Had some depressed numbers with Cleveland and their mess of a QB situation last year. They're probably having the same conversation. Was it the QBs or is our guy washed? I would also nominate Dallas Goedert at age 31. I think he's still good. I don't think he's washed. I think that's also going to be a hefty price tag. Now you've got some budget options. Tyler Higbee, KOC connection, 33 years old, past his prime. You've got Austin Hooper, 31 years old, probably past his prime. He can block. And then the young one that intrigues me is Isaiah Likely. He's been the tight end to Mark Andrews for the first 4 years of his career. That I would love that signing. I also think that's pretty costly. Any names that we've thrown out that you guys would be intrigued by?
I'll just say this real quick. You know, the tight end position, just because they're asked to do so much right away, just from day one, you got to be able to run block. You got to be able to pass block. You got to be able to run clean routes when you're supposed to. You got to be able to catch the ball with some athleticism. I've just noticed, just covering the draft and the NFL the last decade or so, that's a lot for like your average round 3, round 4 tight end. And because of that, you just notice a lot of these guys, it takes 3, 4, sometimes 5 years to get really comfortable in the NFL and know what you're doing at a high level. Josh Alver, kind of a great example of that, came out of San Jose State, known as this kind of pass-catching tight end. Slowly but surely, though, just morphed into this kind of elite blocking tight end. But it took him like 4 or 5 years to kind of get there. So knowing that, I just tend to lean on the older guys a bit more, even older than maybe an Isaiah Likely is intriguing as he's going to be. I think he's going to cost a pretty penny. I'm not saying it's old guys like Travis Kelce or Zach Ertz, but like, again, I'll circle back to David Njoku, 29 years old, has played a lot in the NFL, a lot of games, a lot of experience under his belt. He's done it all. He's seen it all. He's a guy that would be ready to come in for any team and be a tight end one, from day one. And also, too, I think this offseason, this front office is going to have to penny pinch. So I don't think they have the luxury to go, target guys like, who's the New England defensive tackle, Milton Williams, that just paid a ton of money. They had money, but they paid a ton, probably overpaid. It panned out for them. But I think they're going to have to penny pinch. They're going to have to bargain shop a little bit. And I think Njoku being 29, and to your point, Sam, battling through a lot of injuries, I think you're going to be able to get him at a little bit of value. But the Brock Bowers, the Tyler Warrens from Indy, the guys who come out in year one and just, ball out, those are unicorns. That is not the norm. It almost always takes guys 3, 4, sometimes 5 years to kind of hit their stride in the NFL at this position specifically. Trey McBride in Arizona, another good example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the veteran 1 or 2 year deal would tickle your fancy, Spinman. Alec, where do you stand?
Yeah, I mean, as a player and just watching the tape, like I love Isaiah Likely, and I think it would be awesome to watch him next to Josh Oliver. But to the point that you guys have already mentioned, when you are $40 million over the cap, and while, yes, they have a lot of money they can move around, and Rob Brzezinski is as good as anybody at being able to kind of thread that needle. If you're deciding between we're going to spend in free agency on a center or a safety or, critical positions that are the communication hub of both units compared to tight end, which is, I don't want to say it's more of a luxury position because it has become such a critical mismatch creating position in the NFL. Like, it's just when you're comparing center and safety for what those mean to these two, this offense and this defense compared to tight end, it's hard to imagine you'd spend on an Isaiah Likely as opposed to, structure some kind of pay cut with a guy in TJ Hockenson who knows the system. I will just say this, listen to all you guys talk and thinking broadly about the Hockenson move that happened years ago. I kind of put in perspective, that move, I think, is very revealing and reflective of some of the conversation about what happened with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. You traded premium picks for this guy that Detroit was willing to move on from.
In the division.
Right in division, right before a draft that was loaded with tight ends when you're talking Laporta, Tucker Kraft. And yet, that was a move Kwesi made, one influenced very heavily by Kevin O'Connell wanting a tight end in his offense to pair with that offense at the time. So for me, just in thinking about it, that is a move that probably, if I were to shape some kind of story, it is a very revealing move of how things operated in recent years. So it's I'm glad we're talking about it because I do think it is a very interesting position and conversation within an offseason that has a ton of them.
Probably get some clarity on that about a month from now, I would say, on TJ Hockenson.
You know the clip that went kind of viral in the Vikings war room where Kwesi walked up to KOC and said, "We're trading up. We're going to get Dallas Turner." And KOC's going, "Really?" Well, and we all kind of looked at that like, oh, KOC loves it. Like, really? Now that Kwesi's been fired, I kind of go back and look at the tone and I kind of second guess. Was he in his head going, really? That's what we're doing? Really? Trading all that ammo again?
I love the reframe. I love it. When we come back, I will unnecessarily smash the breaking news sounder. We're brought to you by FanDuel today. Winter games officially here. I'm obsessed. I already watched the Moguls this morning, the Super G. I've got the snowboard cross finals on pause upstairs. The second this show's done, got to go see what happened there. But I'm locked in, and I'm locked in at FanDuel too. The medal counts, individual events. You find your angle on the sports you care most about. FanDuel gives you ways to stay connected. Speed skating. Yesterday, chaos in speed skating. Hockey starts today for the USA taking on Latvia. Probably get a large minus number on the money line there if you just want to make a few cents. FanDuel, though, keeps you engaged from start to finish. Winter games are on. No better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. All right, Alec, you'll find that we do this a lot on this show. Breaking news yesterday, the Vikings lose another assistant. Tony Sorrentino goes to Arizona to be their lead wide receivers coach. That's a promotion for him. The exodus continues for the Vikings coaching staff. But, I mean, ultimately, you've still got McCardell. You've still got Brian Flores. Despite the scrutiny, you've still got Phillips and McCown. I would argue you've probably still got 4 of your most important assistants on staff. This is just the league. Guys get promotions. Guys move on. Low-level assistants are gonna try to move around, try to climb the ladder. I don't think this exodus is actually that big a deal. Do you? Does anyone want to fight me on that? Is this actually moving the needle for anyone that these assistants are moving on?
I mean, what I would say is some of these assistants, their contracts had ended, and so they were seeking opportunities regardless. But when you're getting promotions, I mean, it would be one thing if the assistant receivers coach was becoming a I don't know, trainer for the Arizona Cardinals, but he's becoming the lead receivers coach for a team that has Marvin Harrison Jr. and other guys, and it's really interesting opportunity. And then you look at Brian Angelico. He left to be the OC in Pittsburgh. You look at Durante Jones. He left from the DB's coach situation to be the defensive coordinator in Washington. So, yeah, I mean, it's for me, it's very and this is, I love the fans, but it's like a very it's a fan oriented thinking to view that as some clear sign. What I will say though is like who these guys are replaced with to me is critically important, because I think position coaches are massive in terms of developing. And we always talk about drafting, but you never talk about the other side of it, which is once those guys get in your building, you have to maximize those guys. And that falls on the position coaches. So that's for me the most interesting aspect is who are these guys being replaced with? Are they good coaches? Are they coming from internal or external, and why? And I'm sure we'll have a lot of talk about that at the Combine in Indianapolis from Kevin O'Connell, just in terms of who they've hired and why they've hired.
Yeah. If there's one, go ahead, Reg.
No, I was going to say two things for me that I think has been interesting. Going back to last year is Grant Udinski, and I talked to Alec about this before, but he was like a hot head coaching candidate this cycle, which I thought was interesting. He was Alec, he was assistant QB's coach here, and then he ends up being the offensive coordinator for Jacksonville. Like it's pretty meteoric. And then this offseason has been interesting in all these backup quarterbacks. Like David Blau was here when I was here, when I first got to Minnesota, and he did the little ping pong thing from here to Detroit and all that, and ended up back and then ping pong again. Now he's the offensive coordinator. Sean Mannion, I was in the hotel with COVID. Kirk Cousins was out because of COVID in Green Bay, and I saw Sean Mannion try to keep the Vikings playoff hopes alive and keep Mike Zimmer's job prospects alive. And it crashed and burned. And now he's the offensive coordinator for the Eagles. And one thing that I think was really interesting, Chris Cooper leaves here, and Stoutland is like one of the most widely regarded offensive line coaches in all of football. He steps aside in Philly, and Sean Mannion brings Chris Cooper to Philadelphia with him to be the offensive line coach. And I think the Vikings fans here probably had a lot to say about Chris Cooper and how he dealt with the offensive line. I guess we'll kind of find out like how much of the lack of development with the offensive line and all the problems that the offensive line has had was on him, or maybe not on him, after we see what the Eagles do this year.
We previewed an offensive line prospect in Prospect of the Day with Luke Inman a couple weeks ago. That was Jake Slaughter from Florida. We've also previewed Mansur Delane. I know Alec's a big draft guy. You're going to know all these names too. Caden McDonald, the DT, and Dylan Thieneman, the safety in our last show. Another poorly produced open for this segment goes something like this. All right. Take it away.
How much money do we need to like buy the upgraded package, sound effect package, Sam?
Can we get
a little GoFundMe going on this draft season?
I don't think we can really exceed that kind of production level. I mean, that's as good as it gets.
I liked it.
This is great to have Alec on this first episode, because I didn't know he came out with a mock. I pulled it up, and sure enough, the guy I'm going to talk about is in his mock draft. So that already shows me this guy's an elite draft mind already. I think we add some spice here to the mix, Sam. You mentioned all the players we've talked about: corner, nose tackle, center, safety. Let's get our first skill player on the board. Obviously, we've talked a little bit of tight end free agency. We'll see what happens with Aaron Jones. But if I'm KOC, I think you got to start to add some youth, some juice, I guess, into this running back room. You're already set to lose C.J. Ham. Ty Chandler didn't pan out the way you thought it would. And I think they just got to get a little bit younger and faster and more explosive back there. Forever's, it doesn't even matter who's quarterback back there. You got to have a good running game to lean on. Emmett Johnson from Nebraska, I think he checks a lot of boxes, and I'm very intrigued about him. Quick step back as far as this running back class goes, as you get to know it a little bit more. Everybody knows Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, both from Notre Dame. Love's almost a lock to go top 10 guaranteed. Price maybe more of a second round guy, but for running backs, I'm always looking for value in the draft, bang for the buck, right? Maximizing talent with your draft slot. And it just feels like every single year, just because of how the league kind of devalues the position the past 5-10 years or so, you can always find some good talent in the back end of the draft at running back. The Chargers guy this year, what was it? Kamani Vidal, perfect example for the Chargers this year. But if you watch Nebraska at all, Emmett Johnson was just kind of like the heart and soul of that team. Dylan Raiola, he was supposed to be one of the better kind of college quarterbacks this year, but he was banged up a lot. They were forced to lean on the running game. And all he did was he just delivered week in and week out. He even got a few Heisman votes. That's just how good he was. Statistically, he balled out over 1,400 yards on the ground alone, 15 touchdowns, almost a 6-yard per carry average this year, which is obviously outstanding. 46 receptions this year, 39 receptions last year, 85 catches in 2 seasons. So a big impact player in the passing game as well. 5'11", 200 pounds. Built like a rock, low to the ground, kind of one cut and go. That's kind of his bread and butter. Reminds me a lot, and I don't love player comps, but reminds me a lot of Kareem Hunt coming out of Toledo in 2015. Great contact balance, kind of that ability to maybe not make guys miss, but just have guys slide off you a little bit in space like Kareem Hunt really did in his prime. Good finisher, makes you earn every tackle, wore down a lot of defenses last year. Durable, 27 carries in one game. 2 weeks later, he had 25 carries. So, again, being able to do that and stay healthy as your team is really leaning on you, I think speaks volumes. So Emmett Johnson from Nebraska checks a lot of boxes. And again, I think he's a guy value-wise that you might be able to get in the 3rd, 4th round.
Bring them home.
I learn about these players as Inman brings them up, and I do a deep dive on PFF. And are you saying he's local, Reggie?
Yeah.
Richfield.
Yeah.
Richfield.
Oh, beautiful. That's where he went. He went to Richfield. That was his high school.
He was an incredible high school running back.
He's a stud. Yeah.
I think he's from Richfield. Yeah, when I put that in there, I watched the Iowa tape like a few weeks ago, and I was just like bouncing to
Holy
it.
Angels.
I'm like, this guy has juice. See, he's got vision. I like on tape. I think I wrote in my notes because I do this every year because I want to see if I can evaluate these guys at all or if I just suck. But I'm like, yes, please with this guy. I'm like, I mean, he's electric. And to Luke's point, the pass catching, like, I don't know if there was more than one other running back who had more catches than he did this past year in college football. So, yeah, it's probably about time for a young running back to pair with Jordan Mason, who I still don't think has gotten enough credit for what he did as a runner last year. Like he was really good as a runner last year. Everything else is a different conversation, but as a runner, he was good.
Yeah, 68 forced missed tackles per PFF. That was top 10 in the country. Elusive rating, that little wiggle in open space, 88.3. That grade is fantastic. 85.6 overall grade is fantastic. Had 3 kickoff returns in his career. Obviously not a lot, but maybe some potential there in that department as well, which is kind of enticing. Specifically, obviously, for the Vikings. And yeah, again, I just think these running backs, man, I always try to find value, right? Nobody's got unlimited 1st and 2nd round picks. You got to be strategic. I think these running backs always get lost in the shuffle a little bit every draft. There is a big drop off from Jeremiah Love, who's probably going to go top 10. Everybody's got a mock to Kansas City right now at 9 or 10, to the second tier of guys. And right now, that second tier of guys, it just feels like there's no consensus right now. It kind of pick your flavor, depends on what, draft expert you talk to or listen to, but I definitely think Emmett Johnson should be in the mix, in that second tier. And again, maybe a guy that you can get on day 3, just past those, first 100 pick.
2021 Minnesota Mr. Football.
Yeah, stud. Love it.
I'm trying to do some live research of his high school stats because I bet they are absurd. What was that year? 21, you said?
Yep.
Okay, 21.
He was
Emmett
insane.
Johnson at Holy Angels, rushed for This is an 11
Yes.
game.
Yes.
2,484 yards.
Pretty good.
Guess
Yep.
how many touchdowns? Guess the touchdown.
It was like
28.
50 or something.
I've got 41.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I knew it was close to 50. Yeah, I remember like reporting on this kid throughout the season that year. Like he had an incredible year.
And it's also like you're
touchdown.
losing CJ Ham, so you need a local. I mean, you got to replace one
you need the
local with
local
another,
legend.
or
There you
else
go.
how are the fans going to be okay with? No, I mean, on a serious note, because I'm from Alabama, which some of you guys might know and some of you don't. Like, the local thing doesn't do it as much for me. I'm just like, can this dude play? I think he can, but the fact he's local for a profile in the Athletic, I'm all for it. I really am.
There you go.
I think just in general, taking another step back, going back to the running back conversation, I think it's just interesting every year how we have these conversations and how it maybe changes or evolves year to year about these running backs. Like, how do we value these guys? There's just not the Todd Gurleys in the league anymore. Obviously, the Adrian Petersons, things like that. You need 2 or 3 of these guys, and it feels like it's been devalued quite a bit. But now it almost feels like it's kind of reverting back to the mean a little bit. And obviously coaches probably always knew how important running the ball was, but maybe the fans are starting to understand a little bit. From a team building standpoint, you still got to be able to run the ball, especially late in the season, and then obviously in the playoffs as well.
Yeah, I mean, look at what Kenneth Walker just did for the Seahawks.
Great
I mean,
example.
it is and I think the more I've thought about this over this week, like coaches always throw out complimentary football. And oftentimes I like roll my eyes at that, but it's really true because you have to know, like, what is our defense? What is our quarterback play? And then what do we need at running back? Or what do we have in these other 2 areas? And what do we need? And so if your quarterback play is middle to lower tier, you need the run game to be really good and you need the defense to be really elite. And so, like, I think that's so much of it. If the Vikings were to acquire Joe Burrow, which I don't know why the Cincinnati Bengals would trade Joe Burrow, you probably don't need the run game to be really elite. So thinking about it in that vein, I think devaluing certain players in certain positions is just it's just incumbent upon what you have elsewhere on your roster. Like, I think that's so much of what is critical as you think about it.
And I guess to take that a step further, if we're talking about complementary football, knowing the quarterback situation they're going to be in, they're going to need to lean on the running game. And really, they really haven't run the ball very well since KOC's been here. We've talked about that, a lot on this show. They got a little bit better last year, obviously, but still better, but like still kind of average. Like, that's how low the bar was. His first 3 years, they were bottom 3 in like multiple metrics and analytics as far as just running the ball efficiently. They haven't had a home run hitter since, Dalvin Cook left. They haven't had a chain mover you feel good and confident about on a 3rd and 2. And now we're entering year 5. I just feel like we are long overdue to kind of put a bow on this running game department and finally kind of move the needle in the right direction. And I'm not saying Emmett Johnson is like the end all be all guy for that, but I'm just trying to give us some perspective and a couple ideas, fling some names out that whoever it is, they got a couple extra draft picks this year. I feel like they'd be wise to invest in a running back at some point in this draft.
I would have loved to have the Mason Jones duo with Darnold, because that was a team that just needed a supplementary backfield to sit on leads, right? To churn clock, churn first downs. They didn't need a spectacular running game. They just needed a solid running game. We learned last year that a solid running game is not fuel for an offense that's shackled by incompetent quarterback play, right? So if you had that backfield with a Darnold season 2 years ago, who knows how that could have changed things. You still won 14 games, so clearly you were fine. But that would have been fun to see. Another what if.
That kind of reminds me of the Case Keenum magical run in 2017. Latavius Murray coming out of nowhere and just kind of leaning. And the Jarrett combo. Yeah, the 1-2 punch. To your point there, Sam.
Yeah, just supplementary. One segment left. We're going to revisit Alec Lewis's free agency predictions and see if we agree or disagree when we return. Quick break on the Squad Show. And it was quick. Alex, sometimes they're really fast. We are back. Squad Show rolls on. Subscribe to Locked On Vikings, and glad you're part of the #1 sports podcast network here at Locked On. Alec, you wrote this, Dateline, January 22nd. So we are 3 weeks removed. Of the 10 unrestricted free agents I think that you wrote about, you projected the following. Retirements for Harrison Smith and CJ Ham. One of those at least has been confirmed. You predicted re-signing Eric Wilson, Andrew DePaula, Ryan Wright, and Tavier Thomas. You predicted the departure of Ty Chandler, Jeff Okudah, Fabian Moreau, and Justin School, and Jalen Naylor. Did I say Eric Wilson? Re-signing Eric Wilson. That's like a huge one. Honestly, I have a tough time disagreeing with anything on this list. I mean, Tavier Thomas, I don't know if that's a priority. I'm not going to nitpick at that. I think that Eric Wilson is certainly the one I would like to re-sign the most. I think that's also the most difficult one because he's upped his value significantly. But I love your list, honestly. I wanted to have a real hot take, a real big opinion. I can't get myself to bang on the table for Jeff Okudah. I'm sorry, I can't do it. I think Eric Wilson is the one I'm circling. That's absolutely the one I'm circling as priority number one to get him re-signed. And you think, Alec, that it should happen or it can happen? Like, where do you think we fall with that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think should and can, but the two most interesting on the list by far, and it'll be fun to listen to you guys talk about it, but are Eric Wilson and Jalen Naylor. Like, without question, those are the two most interesting. The thing with Eric Wilson is he had such a good year and was such a good fit with what Brian Flores wants to do, and Brian Flores did not mask at all the enjoyment that he had having Eric Wilson, and given Brian Flores' new extension or new contract, I know that he will have a major say in the types of personnel they bring in, obviously, and the enjoyment that he had in Eric Wilson makes me believe that he will push for Eric. And I also, like, to the previous conversation, with the quarterback play being what it's probably going to be, you need the defense to be very, very good, if not elite. And so having continuity specifically on the second level will help there. The Jalen Naylor one, I mean, I am going to be fascinated if he hits the free agent market. I'm going to be fascinated to see what that number looks like because I've already talked to people in the industry. Like, I've gotten texts from executives within the NFC already of what did you think about this guy? What would your projection be on the number that he gets? So there are going to be a lot of teams circling him. The most drastic move outside of quarterback the Vikings could probably make this offseason would be parting with Jordan Addison and trying to extend Jalen Naylor. I don't know what the feasibility or likelihood of that, frankly, is, but those two are definitely, of the unrestricted free agents, the most interesting, and people's opinions on them, I find I'm always listening to hear because I'm always interested in hearing because they're interesting.
I think one part of the equation, maybe it's a small part, I don't know, but one part of the equation as far as bringing back or retaining Jalen Naylor or letting him go has to be about Ty Felton, doesn't it? Because they only had 2 top 100 picks last year. You used the second one on Ty Felton to be the replacement for Jalen Naylor. That's just, when obviously when you're drafting guys, you're looking ahead 2-3 years. So obviously Ty Felton didn't play much at all. We don't know a lot about him. So whether they feel like he's not ready to step in that role, they feel more pressure to bring Jalen Naylor back, or if they know a little bit more information about Ty Felton, then they do feel comfortable with him to let Jalen Naylor go. I'm intrigued about kind of where Ty Felton, his place in this kind of puzzle fits, because again, we just don't have a lot of information about him. And when you use an early pick, and we've talked a lot about Kwesi's drafting, when you use an early pick on a guy, he's got to be a guy that comes in and contributes. And so if you bring Jalen Naylor back, pending what happens with Jordan Addison, which seems to be, to Alex's point, a little bit more of a long shot, but if you bring Jalen Naylor back and pay him all that money, it tells me that maybe Ty Felton is not in the grandiose plans, I guess, over the next year or two. And that in turn would tell me that you missed on another third round pick.
Reg, your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point there, Luke, because it kind of reminds me, and it's not an apples to apples comparison, but they decided to let Cam Bynum walk and they gave a little bit of money to Theo Jackson. And, we saw how it played out this year. And, I'm pretty sure if they had the opportunity to bring Cam back, maybe they think differently on that. But, if they decide to let Speedy go, it was interesting because I feel like Kevin O'Connell sang Speedy's praises for years, even before we really saw him get on the field. And he was just so, almost giddy about what he felt like Speedy could do, but we just couldn't see him on the field because of those injuries. And he ended up being a little bit of a late bloomer these last couple years where you really saw hey, this dude can go. And so the tough part about that whole thing is when Jordan Addison is on, he's a top talent in the NFL, but he has had these weird legal situations that you just wonder okay, do we just ride it out because he's a talented guy and just let Speedy go or not? But I do think it is interesting that they drafted Ty Felton in the 3rd round. And then they decided immediately before the season started, hey, let's bring Adam Thielen back. And it was just usually when you take maybe what you call a premium pick on a guy in the draft, you may not make a decision like that for a guy that, kind of really became a 3rd down specialist. And he didn't have the high usage as maybe you thought he would in the absence of Jordan Addison with that suspension. So I'm interested, just like you said, Luke, just to see what their thoughts may be or what their feel might be for Ty Felton, being that they did give up a 3rd round pick to go and get this guy. Let's see what happens. But I think Speedy's tape and his health over the last couple of years just make this a really, really interesting decision.
Yeah, to me, Alec outlined the 2 biggest questions. It's Jalen Nailor and it's Eric Wilson. And to me, the choice is clear if you have to choose. You've got in Jalen Nailor what I would say is a good wide receiver 3. And he's probably going to go for more than Eric Wilson on the market. And Eric Wilson had legitimately one of the best seasons at his position in the NFL. And it's a position where the Vikings are really undermanned. I don't know what to make of Ivan Pace, but you've got Blake Cashman and a bunch of question marks. You need him back. I don't think you need Jalen Nailor back. And I think that with Eric Wilson's age and his track record, I don't think it's going to break the bank. We've talked about maybe 2 years 12, 2 years 14 for Eric Wilson. It's not absurd. Rob Brzezinski can probably get that cap number pretty low in year 1. I think Eric Wilson is the most logical of sort of those key free agents to re-sign. I wouldn't expect Nailor back with your cap situation. But we're low on time. I wanted just 30 seconds each. Vikings come in plus 5,500 to win the Super Bowl. So bet 100, win 5,500. They're 22nd favorite. They're right in the same ballpark as the Bucks, the Colts, and the Falcons. Seems about right. I mean, Inman, you study this stuff just like me. Feels like that's about exactly where they deserve to be.
I'll just say this, Sam. It's been 59 years, no Super Bowl. They're due. Okay, so great value, great value. I'm looking at. They're due. No, it feels like this year was wide open as far as which teams could maybe make a deep postseason run. We saw that with both the NFC and the AFC. If I'm looking at not just the Vikings, but kind of league wide, I have a feeling if I was a betting man that things would revert back to the big quarterbacks, especially in the AFC. No Joe Burrow, no Lamar, no Josh Allen, no Patrick Mahomes, no Justin Herbert. I feel like one of those guys would definitely, again, odds-on favorite to make a deep push into the playoffs, at least for the AFC.
Mm-hmm. Alec, got a take on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it all comes down to quarterback play, really. Offensive line, quarterback play, and then how elite can you make the defense? I mean, there could be value in this number if you draft heavy on defense, if you become incredibly explosive on defense, and then you can get the run. Like, I think the quickest path to the 2026 team being really good is to further improve the defense, become a really creative running game, and then have capable enough quarterback play. But I mean, as I say that, like, is this coaching staff, is Kevin O'Connor, are they going to be okay transitioning? Is Justin Jefferson going to be okay transitioning from an identity perspective to kind of that play style? I'm not really sure if they will be. So yeah, it's a sensible,
Yeah. And what you just laid out, that formula, that's the Denver Broncos, right? A running game, a defense, and capable quarterback play, not spectacular, like middle of the league quarterback play from Bo Nix, who was taken one pick after J.J. McCarthy. Reggie, final thoughts?
Yeah, but with that formula, you could still probably get Jets his 1,100, 1,200 yards in that, like he's the main receiver. I think that shouldn't be too big of a problem. The interesting thing about it is like the Vikings spent all that money last offseason. They brought Jonathan Allen in, they brought Hargrave in, and we saw the Seahawks. I saw a tweet from Alec, like they got home with 4. They got home with 4, and they had really great back end play. So much so that their best corner, they were sending him on a blitz multiple times, and he got home twice to sack Drake May in that Super Bowl. And so I thought, he was a madman. We know we have a madman here in Minnesota who can do some great things. But when we saw how good his defense was the year that they beat the Rams in the Super Bowl, talking about the Patriots, they had a lockdown corner in Stephon Gilmore, NFL Defensive Player of the Year, and they had solid pressure that they could bring. Flo is a crazy person with the blitzes. So, like, if they do go ahead and do that and just really try to go all in on the defense, and then maybe beef up that run game a little bit more with like a home run hitter that we haven't really seen since like Dalvin Cook left. I think that could be something that could really, really put pressure on teams. And then now you look at some of the play action game being really deadly as well. If you have a run game that's really threatening. And so I'm interested to see how that goes. I will say though, I saw Baltimore on that list with the FanDuel locks for the Super Bowl odds.
Yeah,
I could kind of see it. A quarterback who struggled in the postseason with Lamar Jackson. They bring in Jesse Minter, who's kind of like of that Mike McDonald ilk, gets the defense together. They still got Derrick Henry anchoring that run game. He's still pretty good even at his age, and maybe they don't put so much on Lamar. Like, I could see the blueprint there for the Ravens maybe trying to do it next year.
Nobody has more faith in the Ravens than the sports books. Like, the Ravens could be 2-7 and the sports books would still like have them favored to win the Super Bowl. They are always perpetually toward the top of the list. And hey, they're third going into next year. That's just a huge belief in Lamar Jackson. It's Seahawks number 1, then the Rams, then the Ravens. Great debut, Alec. Thank you for your appearance. Maybe we'll do a Missouri guy for Prospect of the Day next week. We appreciate your time. Reggie Wilson, thank you as well. Luke Inman, and I'm Sam Ekstrom. It's the Vikings Squad Show. Subscribe to Locked on Vikings. The podcast is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Peace out.